What is the most intense confetti cannon moment you've ever had, and what caused it to be so memorable? Story 1. So this happened several years ago, right after I wrapped up a 2-year deployment overseas. I was physically and emotionally drained, running on fumes after being in high alert mode for what felt like forever. On my way back to the States, I had a layover in Hong Kong. It was supposed to just be a stopover, but a good friend of mine, someone I'd worked closely with during those 2 years, surprised me by meeting me at the airport. We grabbed dinner, caught up a bit, and at the end of the night, he handed me a key card to a penthouse suite in a luxury hotel and said, "There's something up there for you. Trust me." Now, I figured it might be a gear drop, maybe a job lead, or something serious like that. We weren't exactly the prank gift type, so I went in expecting some kind of post-deployment debrief gesture. Maybe a letter, maybe a new side mission. When I opened the door, though, I realized immediately I was way off. The lights were low, the place smelled like incense and flowers, and I was greeted by 3 Japanese women who were clearly professionals, but not in the way you're thinking. They specialized in what I can only describe as deep, intentional therapeutic massage with a focus on emotional release and full-body tension recovery. Every movement, every technique was purposeful. Not rushed, not transactional, just healing. I know how this probably sounds. And yeah, I won't pretend there wasn't a strong physical element to it, but what made it so memorable wasn't just the physical intensity, it was the emotional context. 2 years of stress, danger, bottled up emotion, and sensory deprivation all came crashing into this moment of connection and release. It wasn't about lust, it was about feeling human again. When they finally brought me to that breaking point, it felt like something in me unlatched, not just physically, but mentally. I actually blacked out for a second. I came to lying back on the massage table, tears running down my face, not from pain, not from sadness, but just sheer emotional overload. I'd never experienced anything like it. To this day, I'm not sure if I should be embarrassed or deeply grateful, probably both. But that moment, it reset me, genuinely. It was like someone reached in, pressed a reset button, and gave me permission to feel again. And that is why it was the most intense final fireworks moment I've ever had in my life. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. Okay, this is mildly embarrassing, but whatever. It's burned into my memory. So I had just gotten back from a long, brutal hike, like 10 miles uphill both ways, that kind of day. I was sore, dehydrated, and honestly just wanted to melt into my couch. I take a hot shower, throw on some soft clothes, and flop onto my bed. You know those days when everything just lines up perfectly for relaxation. That was this day. Anyway, I put on some music, light a candle for no reason, wasn't planning anything wild, just setting the vibe. I ended up falling into this deep state of calm, and without oversharing, let's just say the stars aligned. I had what I can only describe as a full-body reset, like brain rebooted, muscles unclenched, spirit levitated. I was laughing afterward, not because it was funny, but because it was just so unexpectedly great. What made it so memorable wasn't just the physical side of it, but the combo of timing, peace, and that sense of being totally present. Weird how sometimes it's not about trying harder, it's about being in the right headspace. 10 on 10, enlightenment unlocked. Never looked at scented candles the same way again. Story 3. Back when I was a graduate student, I had the opportunity to tutor a student who, to put it lightly, was absolutely stunning. She was in a sorority, with this effortlessly captivating charm. She had dark skin, dark hair, and her presence always left an impression. We got along really well, and I could sense that there was a bit of chemistry between us, but at the time we were both in relationships, so I respected that boundary, and we kept things professional. Fast forward a few years, and I'm out at a bar downtown, just enjoying the evening with some friends. And there she was, completely out of the blue. She walked up, and we exchanged some friendly greetings, catching up on old times. I'd been wearing glasses that night, and for some reason she took them off me and put them on herself. It felt like a playful gesture, and I remember smiling to myself. Then her friend leaned in, and with a grin said, "Dude, she wants you." At first I wasn't sure what to think, But as we talked more, it was clear there was an undeniable chemistry between us. There was this energy in the air that felt different from before. We ended talking and laughing, and before long, we found ourselves at my place. Now, I want to emphasize that it wasn't just about the physical aspect. It was the connection. The whole experience felt more meaningful than anything I'd anticipated. There was a certain level of comfort and trust, even though we hadn't been together in a while, and it made everything feel more genuine. We banged, and I had the most intense rush in my body when I sprayed on her jugs. It was amazing. Then she left my apartment and went back out drinking. Never saw her again. Story 4. Though I was warned recovery could be rough, I guess I'm a medical anomaly, or maybe my surgeon deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award. I had to get my prostate removed due to cancer. And after the healing process, I discovered something wild. My experience of, let's say, romantic joy went from great to next level. Before, things ranged from that was nice to wow. Now, wow is the new baseline. There are moments I genuinely have to sit down and process what just happened. It's hard to even describe. It's like my system got rewired in the best way. And bonus, no cleanup. I'm not saying cancer is a good thing, far from it, but this was a side effect no one warned me about, and I'm not exactly complaining. Story 5. Back in high school, I was hanging out at my girlfriend's place while her parents were out. Things started getting, romantic. You know how teenage hormones go, peak chaos. She starts giving me a blowy. We were in the middle of a particularly intense moment when I let her know things were about to, let's say, reach a conclusion. I expected her to stop, like she usually did. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye, wrapped her arms around me, like it was the finale of a fireworks show, and made it very clear that she was taking charge of this situation. We had never even talked about going that far, so I was both stunned and profoundly affected. It was a short conversation afterward that mostly consisted of wide-eyed blinking and, "So we do that now?" Let's just say I remember it vividly, like core memory level. Story 6. This one lives rent-free in my head. I went over to my girlfriend's flat after she'd been away for a couple weeks. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and let's just say the anticipation was palpable. Now here's the catch. Her roommate was home, and the walls weren't exactly soundproof, so we had to keep things discreet. At least, that was the plan. Well, one thing led to another, and she was showing me how much she'd missed me. She starts giving me blowy. It got intense, like seeing stars intense. I tried to keep it together, but at one point I started to shout, "Oh my God," out loud before she clamped a hand over my mouth, like we were in a spy movie. The wildest part, she didn't miss a beat, total stealth mode. When it was all over, I collapsed back onto the bed like I just finished a marathon. Honestly, that whole moment set a bar so high it's probably orbiting the earth now. She took every drop of me like a champ. In hindsight, that girl spoiled me, and I should have put a ring on it. I absolutely should have locked that down. Crescent la vie. Story 7. Hands down, the most unforgettable experience I've ever had was when a partner gave me what I can only describe as a marathon-level massage. Not just a back rub, I'm talking full body, slow, intentional, and incredibly thoughtful. 3 hours of pure focus and patience, and somehow he managed to keep things so intense without ever rushing or crossing boundaries too soon. Basically edged me the entire time. He didn't go straight to the obvious areas. He took his time, a lot of time. Think deep tissue work. Attention to areas I didn't even know carried tension, and all with this quiet, calming energy that made me feel like I was floating. By the time he finally shifted the tone just slightly, I was already on another planet. It was so powerful that my body literally started shaking, like it didn't know how to handle that level of release. Afterwards, I fell into the deepest, most restful sleep of my life. 9 hours, uninterrupted. It felt like a full reset of my nervous system. Edit, for the curious and the respectful, yes, he actually studied how to do this. Researched techniques, learned about how to be present, and tailored it to what I personally needed. Google tantric massage, you'll know. He even looked into massage methods for sciatica because I'd mentioned it once in passing. That kind of care and patience, next level. To any guys watching this who are curious, I promise you, if you take the time to learn and truly understand this kind of connection, Your partner will never forget it. Look up mindful massage, tantric touch, and bodywork techniques. Be intentional. Go slow. Respect and presence go a long way. Story 8. It happened on a random weekend getaway with someone I just started seeing. We rented this tiny cabin in the woods. No cell service, no TV, just a fireplace, some books, and a Bluetooth speaker. We both needed to unplug, and honestly, I wasn't expecting much beyond a cozy break from the city. The second night, a storm rolled in. Pouring rain, wind shaking the windows, the whole dramatic vibe. We couldn't go outside, so we dimmed the lights, put on a mellow playlist, and just started talking like real conversations. Past relationships, fears, goals, stuff we usually kept guarded. That alone felt electric. Somewhere in all that vulnerability, things got physical, but not in a rushed or typical way. Everything was unhurried, incredibly attentive, and more about being present than hitting some finish line. I'd never experienced anything like it, like we were completely synced up. The moment everything peaked, no graphic details, don't worry, it didn't feel like just a physical thing. It felt emotional, intense, even kind of overwhelming. I didn't cry, but I could have. I just curled up next to him and passed out like someone flipped my off switch. Woke up the next morning feeling like I'd left and come back to earth. I think what made it so memorable was the safety I felt, like being seen and held in a way I didn't know I needed. There was no pressure, just connection. To this day, it sets my gold standard. Story 9. A couple years back, my wife and I had what I can only describe as one of the most chaotically magical nights we've ever had. It started out like a normal evening, but for whatever reason, she was just on another level, super affectionate, way more vocal than usual, and just totally in the zone. We've always had good chemistry, but that night, she brought championship energy. Now usually we have a bit of a routine. I help her out, she helps me out, good times are had. I don't last long anyway. I'm no corn star, all right? But that night, she kept going and going. I was doing everything I could, switching things up, trying different techniques, basically giving the performance of a lifetime. My right forearm felt like I was halfway through a CrossFit class. She hit multiple finish lines before we'd even reached the main event. I honestly started wondering if I needed to hydrate or take a break, but she was thriving. It was like I accidentally activated cheat codes. Then something miraculous happened. I actually lasted longer than usual. If you know, you know. My internal timer usually doesn't run past 5 minutes, but that night I guess my body decided to give me a bonus round. We tried a few different setups, and each time she just kept hitting milestones like it was a video game. And then it was my turn. Let's just say things were intense. So intense, in fact, that as I hit my grand finale, my body decided to throw in some unexpected sound effects. Every time I made a strong forward motion, I let out a tiny honk, like repeatedly, couldn't stop it, no control. We both burst out laughing mid-scene, completely lost it. The moment was romantic, hilarious, slightly embarrassing, and absolutely unforgettable. Story 10. I was a freshman in college. I had a girl over to my dorm, and we were chatting. My roommate came back and went to bed. Me and her were laying in mine, and I told her that either she'd have to leave or we'd have to whisper. She said, or we could not talk, and kissed me. Then she went downstairs on me, and I had an out-of-body experience. I couldn't tell you what exactly she did, but I remember watching myself getting it from over my own shoulder. When I came, I felt perfect, genuinely otherworldly and mind-blowing. Story 11. A few months ago, my wife and I had an experience that still makes us both laugh to this day. So we have a roommate who sometimes brings home edible gummies. He's a chill guy and occasionally offers us some, and one evening we decided to indulge. Now I'm not really experienced with edibles, and let's just say I overdid it a bit the first time. I ate the whole thing without realizing what I was in for. It wasn't terrible, but I ended up with a bit of a headache and some classic edible effects. My wife, however, had a much stronger reaction, probably due to her neurodivergence, and she got really. I wasn't in the best condition to perform, but I wanted to make sure she felt good, so I decided to focus on other ways to help her relax and enjoy herself. Normally, I feel like I'm okay with, being attentive to her needs, but that night, something really unexpected happened. As I was being more mindful than usual, I felt something on the upper part of her vaginal wall that was different. It was kind of rough, almost like sandpaper, but way softer, and even though she was very, very wet, this spot felt oddly dry. For some reason, I suddenly remembered something about anatomy from back in the day and thought, wait, this might be the elusive G-spot. I focused in on that area with laser-like precision, like I was a professional miner drilling for precious gems. All I can say is that the results were incredible. She was in a state of pure bliss and had one of the most powerful reactions I've ever witnessed. I genuinely thought we were about to see a small fountain of joy happening there, but no pressure, just pure happy vibes. Afterward, we just laid back, totally relaxed. She asked if I wanted to continue, and I honestly just felt like I'd already reached a Zen state of peace. Her experience was so good, I was good too. Not to mention, my focus was so intense during the whole thing that I didn't even feel the need to, perform in the usual way. It was the most relaxed I'd felt in a while. Story 12. When I met my now husband, it was kind of a movie moment. Picture this. We were in his car in the middle of nowhere on a quiet night. It wasn't planned at all, but the energy between us was undeniable. At one point, he asked if he could kiss me, and, well, one thing led to another. Before we knew it, we were in the back seat, and the chemistry was through the roof. He starts kissing me on the V-zone. What really shocked me was how in tune he was with me, not just physically, but emotionally too. That night, I experienced something I didn't even know was possible. Let's just say that he had me feeling things that were new to me. And not only that, but he was so attentive. He wasn't in any rush, just making sure I felt great, and aftercare was amazing. It was honestly the best I'd ever felt. Afterward, he didn't just leave me hanging, he lit some weed. We snuggled up and spent hours just talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. The next day, I woke up to a cute text from him saying, "Good morning," and that's when I knew this was something real. We've been inseparable ever since. That moment, definitely the most memorable of my life. He made me feel seen, heard, and loved in a way I'd never experienced before. Story 13. I will accept all the judgment that comes with this, but a girl was cheating on her boyfriend with me. I knew about it. I said I felt kind of guilty about all this. She looked up at me through her lashes, said, "Why would you feel guilty? I'm the one being a bad girl." This instantly made me super turned on. Story 14. It started off as a pretty good day. I had taken a small dose of LSD in the morning. Not much, just enough to feel like the world had a bit more depth and color. I spent the day wandering around my city, headphones in, just vibing, music, sunshine, movement. It was peaceful. By the time I got home, I was physically tired, but mentally still humming with energy. My building has a rooftop space that's perfect for unwinding, so I grabbed a blanket, queued up a mellow playlist, and made my way up there just as dusk was settling in. The sky was overcast. Soft clouds muted the sunset, which was perfect. I lay back on a rooftop couch and pressed play. The first song was Moonlight Sonata. Now I'd heard that piece dozens of times before, but this time it hit completely differently. As the first notes played, the clouds above me seemed to thin, almost dissolve, as if the music itself was shifting the weather. I was suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. Not sadness, not joy, just awe. It felt like Beethoven had somehow reached through time and placed a hand on my chest. I saw colors that had no name. Deep, rich, layered sensations, like the sound had a texture, like mahogany and salt water. I started crying not because I was sad, but because I didn't know how else to react to the sheer beauty of it. The only way I can describe it is, it felt like a 3-minute full-body emotional release, like my soul had a reset button and someone hit it. When it ended, I lay there, completely still, catching my breath like I just sprinted up a mountain. I genuinely wondered if I'd just broken some part of my brain in the best possible way. After a while, I decided to test it out. I queued up some Chopin. Same thing, different piece, same tidal wave of beauty, same flood of emotion, same need to just lie very, very still afterward and rethink my entire existence. At that point, I was emotionally tapped out. I made my way back downstairs, still a little shaky, still feeling like I just touched something sacred. Haven't listened to classical music the same way since. Story 15. All right, so I never thought I'd be someone sharing this kind of story, but here goes. I'd had a couple of girlfriends before I met my wife, all great people, and honestly, the physical side of those relationships was good, no real complaints. Except for one thing, no matter how much effort they put in, I just couldn't finish from oral. I always appreciated the enthusiasm, and it felt good, don't get me wrong, but that final moment, it never came. After a while, I figured that's just how I was wired. Fast forward a bit. I meet this amazing woman who would eventually become my wife. We really hit it off, and everything just felt easy and comfortable between us. The first time things started getting intimate, I gave her a heads up. I said something like, "Hey, just so you know, it feels great, but I've never really been able to finish from this." She looked at me like I just challenged her to a high-stakes duel. She didn't say much, just kind of smiled like she'd accepted a mission. And then she got to work. I don't know what kind of Jedi training she had before we met, but it was like she had a manual specifically written for my body. There was nothing rushed or mechanical about it. She paid attention, like real attention, rhythm, pressure, pacing. It all built up slowly but perfectly. It was like she tuned into some hidden frequency I didn't even know I had. About 10 minutes in, it hit me. And I mean, it hit me. It felt like I'd short-circuited. I was genuinely concerned I was having some kind of medical event. My whole body locked up, I was shaking. My breathing went weird, and I remember just lying there stunned, staring at the ceiling like I'd just seen the face of God. It wasn't just the physical release. It was emotional. Like, I didn't even know my body could do that. I had seen videos or stories where women would kind of melt after intense moments like that, and I used to think, must be nice. Turns out, we're capable of that too. That experience was 5 years ago. We're married now, and I still think about that first time she showed me what was possible. It wasn't just about the physical. It was about being with someone who genuinely cared enough to learn me. That moment completely rewrote my understanding of intimacy. And yeah, I married the hell out of her. Story 16. Not proud of how casually this all happened, but hey, it was one of those nights that just stuck with me. So this was a few years back, with my ex. We'd had a pretty good relationship at the time, lots of chemistry, very spontaneous energy, but this one night just hit different. She came home late after a night out with her friends, still a bit tipsy, laughing, makeup slightly smudged, that kind of glow people get when they're riding the high of a good night. As soon as she walked through the door, I could tell she was feeling bold. She basically pounced on me with that mix of energy that's both playful and completely uninhibited. The kind you don't question, you just go with it. We started making out, hands everywhere, the mood was electric. Then she kind of pulled back and whispered that she was on her period, which I was fine with. We probably would have just kept it to foreplay. But then completely out of the blue, she looked at me with this fire in her eyes and said, "I want you to take me from behind." I was not expecting that. We hadn't really gone down that road before, so it caught me off guard in the best possible way. Something about the confidence and spontaneity of it absolutely flipped a switch in me. We moved things to the bedroom, and I won't go into graphic details, but let's just say the energy didn't drop for a second. It was intense. Not just the physical part, but the eye contact, the little comments she'd make, the way she was totally in the moment. It was the kind of connection that only happens when both people are completely tuned into each other. Toward the end, she said something, won't repeat it word for word, but it was along the lines of "don't hold back," and I didn't. It was like my body forgot how to function for a second. Total sensory overload. I remember gripping the sheets, feeling like I was going to levitate. I've never had an experience like that before or since. Like every muscle in my body was in sync and everything aligned perfectly in that moment. Fireworks level intensity. To be honest, the sex I have now with my current girlfriend is way more fulfilling overall. We're more connected emotionally, and it's healthier in every sense. But that one night with my ex, that was a cosmic event. Right people, right time, right chaotic energy. Story 17. This one is a little different, but definitely one of the most intense and memorable experiences I've ever had. A few years ago, my husband had to undergo thyroid surgery due to some health issues he'd been managing for a while. It was a stressful time for both of us. Doctor's appointments, blood work, surgery prep, the works. When we finally got the all clear after his recovery, we were beyond relieved. It felt like we could finally breathe again. That night, we decided to celebrate in the most natural way a couple in love does. We got a little wine, relaxed, and eventually ended up in bed. I don't know if it was the emotional high of knowing he was okay or just how connected we felt in that moment, but what followed was, hands down, the most intense bedroom session of my life. We ended up being intimate for over an hour, and I'm not talking about the on and off stop and start kind. This was constant, locked in, deeply connected intimacy. I lost count of how many times we changed positions, how much we laughed, and how much we just felt each other. I had 3 orgasms, real ones, full body kind, and by the end, my legs were literally shaking. My inner thighs and lower pelvic muscles felt like I'd done an intense workout. I could barely walk the next day without wincing a little. The surprising part, he didn't finish. He was into it, fully present, but just couldn't get there. Eventually, I asked if he wanted to ditch the condom and just go for it. I said I'd take a morning after pill, no problem. Even then, it still took him a while. But when he finally did, it was like a weight lifted for both of us. We ended up lying there, out of breath, and completely wiped out, just staring at the ceiling and laughing. A few days later, during a follow-up appointment, we found out he had developed an underactive thyroid, one of the common and lesser-known symptoms, delayed ejaculation. Everything suddenly made sense. Looking back, it was more than just a physically intense moment. It was emotional, healing, and kind of symbolic. After months of uncertainty and stress, we came back together, literally and figuratively, in a way that reminded us how strong our bond really is. Still the most unforgettable night of my life. Story 18. A few years back, I had just started experimenting with edibles. I wasn't a heavy cannabis user by any means, still very new to the whole being high thing. That particular day, I was out sailing with my girlfriend at the time, who, for lack of a better term, was a force of nature. She was confident, affectionate, adventurous, and when it came to intimacy, she didn't hold back. We had sailed to this quiet, secluded little cove off the river, perfect blue sky above, nothing but water and trees around us. After we dropped anchor and made sure everything was secure, we ducked below deck to relax for a bit. The edible had kicked in just right, calming but heightened. Everything felt more alive. Touch, sound, sensation. It was like my senses were dialed up to 11. We started making out, slowly at first, but it didn't take long before things ramped up. There's no polite way to put it. We went at it like two people who had been stranded at sea for weeks. Wild, unfiltered, passionate. It was hot and a little chaotic in the best way. We'd just been swimming earlier, so we were still a bit damp, and I had a fan running to keep the air moving below deck. The mix of the fan, the river breeze, the movement of the boat, it made the whole experience feel surreal. As we got more into it, the combination of the high and the pure physical connection, we had turned everything electric. I wasn't just enjoying myself. I was completely overtaken. By the time I reached climax, it felt like my whole body shut down for a second. I moaned loudly, and apparently kept doing so long enough that she paused and asked, "Are you okay?" She genuinely thought something was wrong, that maybe I pulled a muscle or was in pain. Nope, I was just completely overwhelmed, in the best possible way. It wasn't just the orgasm, it was the buildup, the way we moved together, how perfectly in sync we felt, that kind of closeness where nothing else exists in the world for a while. I don't think I've ever had another experience where time stood still quite like that. It's been about 8 years now, and I'm no longer with that girlfriend, but I still remember that moment vividly. It was the kind of experience that makes you understand why people write poetry, songs, and novels about love and lust and sailing into the sunset. Story 19. This goes back to the early 2000s, senior year of high school bleeding into college. I had just started seeing this girl who I thought was way out of my league. She had this calm confidence about her, and there was something about the way she carried herself that made me feel like I had to bring my A game. She didn't just flirt, she read people, and I guess she read me like a book. Fast forward a couple of months in, we're at her place. Her parents were out, we had the house to ourselves, and after a movie, things naturally started heating up. Before I knew it, I was on her bed, completely vulnerable, trying and failing to play it cool. She starts going down on me, And don't get me wrong, that alone was mind-blowing. But then, without missing a beat, she lightly rakes her nails down the left side of my chest. Not hard, just enough to send chills through me. She trails them across my torso, brushes past my hip, down the inside of my thigh, and then back up again, using the smooth side of her fingers this time. All the while, she's continuing what she was doing without breaking rhythm. And I don't know what kind of magic alignment of nerves and sensations happened in that moment, but when her nails hit the inside of my thigh on the second pass, it was like my whole body just let go. I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. It wasn't just intense, it was like my body had a full system reboot. Lights out, game over. Afterward, I remember just laying there in stunned silence thinking, okay, that just changed my entire understanding of what's possible. I knew right then and there, this woman got me on a level I didn't even know existed. We've been married over 15 years now, still together, still making each other short circuit from time to time. Story 20. All right, so this happened a few years back, and I still laugh and shake my head when I think about it. My wife had overdone it on a workout, legs day I think, so she was sore and kind of hobbling around the house like she'd aged 40 years overnight. I offered to give her a massage, just to be nice, totally wholesome intentions. No ulterior motive, genuinely just wanted to help her feel better. She laid down on the bed, face down, and I straddled her thighs like kneeling over her, not in a weird way, and started working her shoulders and back. I moved down to her legs and calves for a while too. At that point it was still all innocent, and I was focused on doing a good job, not trying anything. But after a while I shifted back up to her upper back, and the way I was positioned, my body was now kind of draped over her, hovering close, my face near her ear. The whole thing started to feel different. There wasn't a clear line where things went from massage to wait, this is getting kind of steamy, but we both started to feel it at the same time. She looked over her shoulder at me, smiled, and then rolled over onto her back. Still no words exchanged, just that kind of charged silence you only get when you both know what's about to happen without saying it. She took off her t-shirt and just laid there, still quiet, waiting. I put my hands on her chest and, look, I don't even know how to explain this properly, but something about the buildup, the closeness, the sound of her breathing, I guess my brain and body just short-circuited. I didn't even mean to finish, but I did, right there, instantly. Most intense, unexpected, ridiculous orgasm I've ever had. Like, eyes rolling back, muscles spasming, embarrassing level of intensity. My wife looked at me like, wait, seriously? And I just nodded, speechless, completely dazed. She definitely expected more, and I tried to rally afterward, but my body was like, nope, that sip's all you sir getting tonight. We still joke about it. She calls it the massage that broke you. So yeah, sometimes the most memorable moments don't come from wild scenarios or planned nights, but from something totally innocent turning unexpectedly electric. Story 21. This one's a bit unconventional, but absolutely unforgettable. I was driving home late one night, after a long and stressful shift. I don't know what it was, maybe the buildup from the day, or just that weird mix of exhaustion and adrenaline, but I was feeling very keyed up. I thought I could ignore it and power through the drive, but nope, my mind was going a mile a minute, and I was not going to make it home in peace. So I pulled off into a quiet, dimly lit side street just to collect myself. I reclined the seat a bit, took a few deep breaths, and tried to relax, but my mind just wouldn't slow down. I remembered this silly idea I'd once read online, people saying car seats and gear shifts could be surprisingly siftive in the right mood. I'd always laughed it off, but that night curiosity got the better of me. Let's just say I tried a little experimenting with how I was sitting in the car, adjusted my posture, found a sweet spot, and before I knew it, my brain and body were completely in sync. The stars aligned. The buildup, the environment, the novelty of it, it all came together in this ridiculously intense release that caught me totally off guard. It was so unexpected and overwhelming, I sat there for a good 10 minutes afterward, just processing what had happened. It was hands down the most surprising, spontaneous, and oddly powerful experience I've ever had. And yes, I now look at my car a little differently. Story 22. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I went to stay with my sister for a few days. She lived in a really small house, And since my girlfriend's son was with us, we all had to share one room. It was cozy, to say the least. Now the thing is, when you're in close quarters like that, privacy goes out the window. We'd sneak little moments, quick kisses in the hallway, whispered jokes. But for 3 whole days, there was absolutely no alone time. By the time we made it through the 3-hour drive back home, we were both at a breaking point. We didn't even unpack. She grabbed my hand, pulled me into the bathroom, and all I'll say is, I don't think I've ever experienced that level of relief and intensity in my life. I let out several days of pent-up energy in the span of about 3 minutes. It was fast. It was a blur. And it felt like hitting a pressure release valve after days of tension. Definitely one for the memory books. Story 23. This might be a weird one, but hands down the most intense and confusing experience I've ever had was during my freshman year of college, and it wasn't even with another person. I had just started college, coming off a very sheltered upbringing. I was homeschooled through high school and didn't receive much in the way of formal sex education. So when it came to understanding my own body, let's just say I was a little behind the curve. Anyway, one morning, I decided to go for a run. Nothing major, just a casual jog through campus and the surrounding neighborhood. It was early, cool outside, and I remember feeling pretty good, energized, focused, enjoying the rhythm of it. About halfway through the run, something unexpected happened. It started as this strange buildup, this growing warmth and tightness in my core. At first I thought it was just a cramp, or maybe I was dehydrated. But then it got more intense, like a lot more intense. Before I could really process what was happening, I had to stop running. My legs were shaking. My breath caught in my throat, and I could barely stand. I sat down on a bench nearby, thinking I was having some sort of medical episode. My whole body was trembling. My pulse was through the roof, and I felt this intense wave of, well, at the time I didn't even have the vocabulary for it. It wasn't until years later, after doing some reading and talking to people, that I realized I had experienced an exercise-induced orgasm. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it is. Back then, though, I was convinced I had a seizure or some kind of nervous system issue. I almost went to the campus clinic to get checked out. Honestly, the only reason I didn't was because I was too embarrassed to explain what happened, especially since I didn't know how to explain it. I walked back to my dorm at, like, half a mile per hour, still totally rattled, not because it was unpleasant. It actually felt amazing, but because I had no idea what had just happened to me. I spent the rest of the day wondering if I was sick or broken or dying. Looking back, it's both hilarious and kind of fascinating. That experience was completely unintentional, but absolutely one of the most intense physical sensations I've ever had. And the mystery of it made it all the more memorable. Story 24. On my very first day of college, I met someone who I thought was just quirky. Turns out she was a lot. We went back to her dorm to watch a movie, classic freshman move, and one thing led to another. Things got intense fast. She decided that instead of going all the way, she'd just tease me for a long time, like almost an hour of whispering in my ear and driving me absolutely crazy. I thought we were working our way towards something more direct, but nope. Her mission was purely to push me to the edge and leave me there, and she succeeded. I was wearing these brand new Calvin Kleins, and let's just say they didn't survive the night. Neither did her roommate's futon. But here's the wild part. Right in the middle of all that, I felt this sharp pain in my lower abdomen. Turns out I had pushed my body so far that I actually gave myself a hernia. I literally busted a gut. So yeah, first day of college, met a chaotic person, had the most intense experience of my life, and ended up at student health the next morning explaining that no, I didn't injure myself at the gym. Good times. Story 25. Honestly, the most powerful moment I've experienced in the bedroom wasn't even about me. It was about my wife. And it turned into one of those nights you remember for the rest of your life. It started on a rare date night. Just the two of us, no distractions, no responsibilities pulling us in 5 different directions. As parents, we don't often get time like that, so we soaked up every second. From the moment we left the house, there was this quiet spark, playful glances, little touches, shared laughs, that kind of natural chemistry that builds slowly but surely. By the time we got home, The energy between us had completely changed. It was relaxed, joyful, but also full of anticipation. And once we had some privacy, things moved fast, but not in a rushed way. We were completely tuned in to each other. What made it so memorable was how connected we were in that moment. I was completely focused on her, not just physically, but emotionally. Every reaction, every shift in energy, I responded to. There was no script, no goal, just two people fully present with one another. At one point, something just clicked. She reacted in a way I'd never seen before, like something inside her had completely let go. It was such a release of emotion and energy that we both just paused afterward, stunned. She looked over at me, eyes wide, and after a moment of silence said, "Can we try that again?" Round two was just as intense, and by the end of the night, we were both laughing, slightly overwhelmed, and joking about whether we needed to invest in better blankets. But beyond all that, the real reason it was so unforgettable was the emotional vulnerability, the kind of raw connection that only happens when trust, timing, and energy all line up perfectly. It reminded us that even after years together, we're still learning new things about each other. It wasn't just a moment of passion, it was a reminder of how deep our connection runs, and that's something I'll never forget. Story 26. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3.5 years, and we've had a very deep and strong connection from day one. One day about 2 years ago, we had both consumed some edibles, which is not uncommon for us. We've been intimate countless times while high. Maybe it was simply the way it started, or that it was a slow build-up. I'm not really sure. We didn't have crazy intimate session this time. Instead, it was intentional, slow love-making. All I can say is that this is the one time in my life that it felt like two souls connecting on a celestial level. We had the most intense and simultaneous climax either of us has ever had while maintaining deep eye contact and what felt like quite literally staring into each other's souls. For a brief moment it was scary to be that vulnerable, but once I surrendered to the experience it was ethereal. I'm pretty sure I made some interesting noises, and she did too, but none of that mattered because in that moment it really felt like the two of us were becoming one. We still talk about that moment to this day. Story 27. So I got out of a long-term relationship. Not because I wanted to, but that's a whole other story. I'd had only had two partners in 14 years. So I was quite comfortable with only two people. My last partner didn't enjoy intimacy. So over the years she often told me I last too long, which I don't think could be over 20 minutes anyway. So I would try and get it over as fast as I could. So yeah, I was for years trying to finish as fast as possible. Let's rewind to just 4 or 5 months ago. I'm meeting this new girl for the first time, and I'm beyond excited and at the bar with the boys, and one mentions that I'm going to explode when I touch her for the first time. Mind you, I haven't met this person IRL before. We're in a LDR and I'm flying in to meet her and stay at her apartment for 4 days. Panic sets in and I buy some pills to help me, just in case, safe. Another random fact in my past relationships, I always use condoms and had great pull-out game. I have never come inside a girl or had to get plan B. Now fast forward to December, when I finally meet her after 2 months of texting and eye-banging each other over FaceTime. We get to her apartment after dinner. She looks amazing, her outfit had my jaw on the floor, and we maintained eye contact nearly the entire time. Her proportions are crazy. I could literally wrap my hands around her waist so they touch. And a body that turns heads. I couldn't believe my eyes at first, and was just thinking that at some point I would see everything. We exchange a few gifts, and the make-out session starts immediately. I couldn't have been more eager. We make it to her bedroom, and let's just say we start the action. I had already taken my Hems pill. She reminds me that she's on the pill and it's impossible for her to get pregnant beforehand. She was incredibly vocal about how much she was enjoying the moment, which only made everything feel even more intimate. I had never experienced a connection like this before. It was like we were both completely present with each other, and it felt amazing. I'm about to lose it too. Her makeup is a mess, and she looks even hotter now that her eyes are smeared. So I'm having the time of my life. I've never been more turned on in my life, and finally after what seemed like a dream, the ending was glorious, and it's a long one. I didn't solo for about 3 weeks prior. We were emotionally and spiritually connected before we physically connected. And honestly, I think that's why it felt so good. as well as some other factors. This person is my current girlfriend and been together 6 months. I'll fly in to see her at the end of May for a week. Each visit hasn't diminished the absolute amazing moment we have. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.